Welcome, everybody, to the Huddle, KGUN9's weekly streaming sports talk show. I'm Jason Barr, joined by Pat Paris. As always, Pat, good afternoon. How are you today?
Good. A lot going on, Jason, for, late
Sure.
January. Not just basketball either. A lot going on.
Yeah, certainly football and the Super Bowl, Arizona football schedule released today. But I thought we would start with Arizona basketball, a really tough loss at Oregon State. They bounced back with a good road win at Oregon. And, maybe one of their best games of the season and a game they really needed to show they could win on the road. And they get it done and avoid what would have been a bad sweep at the Oregon schools. And we've got something new this year, our weekly KGUN9 poll. And I thought we would start with that just to kind of promote it and let you vote and see what you think. There was one instance in the game, Pat, in which Caleb Love had a big dunk at the end of the first half. And I think it gave him 20 points. And then right afterwards, he kind of jawed with the fans a little bit and was teed up. So that leads us to our poll. And that is, Pat, how would you describe Caleb Love's trash talking? The swagger that Arizona needs, it's too much, tone it down, or, it's not really an issue. Where would you vote on that?
Well, first of all, I calling it trash talk with the fans when the fans started is I don't know how you define it. I guess trash talk's the closest you can come. I looked at it as he was getting, from the first tip, that student section was on him, just like at Oregon State. And he quieted the Oregon State crowd. He quieted that Oregon crowd a little bit. And it's a 20, 21-year-old who gets emotional. And I actually like it. I think that edge that he plays with and that swagger is a good thing. So to me, it's not a real issue. In fact, for Tommy Lloyd, it's not an issue either, because he did the poster jam that he did earlier in the season that everybody says might be the best jam of the year in college basketball. He got a technical on that too. And Tommy Lloyd wasn't upset, and I wasn't upset. It didn't hurt him. It didn't hurt him at all. And it's kids being kids. So I didn't mind it.
You say that now, Pat, but if there's a big moment in the NCAA tournament and he gets teed up
Well,
and it costs him 2 free throws late in the game, I don't think you're going to be feeling the same way. I think, yes, I can understand voting one, the swagger that Arizona needs, but he can't get teed up. That's not okay. And if that's the second time, I actually don't remember him getting a tee that first time. But if that's the second time, he can't be getting multiple tees. Yeah. And if he gets 2 in a game, he's out, right?
Yeah.
So,
right. And he never came close to getting another one afterwards. I sometimes it's motivation for your team too, and that's why coaches do it occasionally. You get teed up because you wanted your team to know you got their back. In this case, that was an awesome performance. It was an awesome move. Would I appreciate the fact that he didn't get? It was not a technical, Jason. It wasn't. I don't even understand why that was a technical. To this point, nobody can explain it. Now,
there's a little bit of taunting involved,
Well, it wasn't taunting. It was, how do you like that? You guys have been on me the whole game. How do you like that?
I know, but he shouldn't be jawboning with the fans.
I think referees need to understand that kids.
It's on the player, though. The player shouldn't be jawboning with the
I
fans.
disagree wholeheartedly. Yeah. I think that was I think that was really ticky-tack. I don't think it was a technical. I don't think that he was going out of his way to stir things up. I think it was a kid who got a chance to finally get them to stop jawing at him the entire time. So he said something, as he ran past them. It was not a big deal. And he is not going to get 2 tees in a game. The guy is not
jawing with the Duke fans the whole game.
Yeah, exactly, because they were on him from the start of the game.
Down the road, he's got to tone it down.
This is a kid who comes with some baggage. He comes as a superstar player at North Carolina, and it didn't work out there. So everybody wants to be that student section that can get under his skin. And guess what? He went for 36, and he ended up getting under their skin. There was not a technical there. It was ridiculous.
All right. Well, either way, Arizona, they do need his scoring for sure. And at a time when they need somebody to, pick up the slack scoring wise and get buckets, this is a guy who goes to the lane and scores. And he is exactly, what they need. He's not going to have the highest field goal percentage on the team. But they needed a 20-point first half performance, and
They did.
until Kylan Boswell can get back on track.
I was just going to say, but who else played really well in that second half that helped them a lot? And that was Kylan Boswell. I think they all played a little bit better. I think that was one of those games that finally a big time performance by Caleb Love actually elevated the rest of his team to play well too.
That's what they need.
Yeah, and that's what they need. He needs to be that kind of a play. He needs to be, that superstar that elevates everybody on the team, not just his own performance. And I think that's why that Oregon game was a pretty special offensive performance by the Wildcats this year.
Yes, Arizona drops 2 spots in the AP Top 25. They're now down to 11. Looking at a 2-3 seed right now, potentially still in the West because there aren't a lot of good teams in the West, right? So
yeah. And don't forget this. I brought this up before. They're still number 3 in the net ranking, the NCAA net ranking, which the tournament selection committee uses. They're behind Houston and Purdue.
Yeah, they're not getting a number 1 seed.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying just keep in mind that's why they may get a 2 seed. Ken Palm still has them ranked number 5, and Ken Palm, everybody loves to quote the Ken Palm rankings as well, and they're number 5. My point is the strength of schedule has elevated them to a position where they can lose a few games like this on the road. Are they ideal? No. Jason, you know what the win percentage in the Pac-12 right now is on the road for the road teams?
What's that?
28.6% of the time they win the game, the road team. So Arizona is actually bucking the average with more road wins than road losses, but they have 3 road losses. They really can't afford any more losses in the Pac-12 if they want to get a 2 seed. But you never know. You just don't know because there are a lot of top 10 teams that are losing right now. It's like, every night you see on ESPN, you see one of the top 10 teams on the road losing in the Big 12 and the ACC, the SEC. So it's not easy on the road. And I think the Pac-12 is pretty much the same way as all the other conferences. It's not easy.
All right. So they got the California teams coming in this week. It's a Thursday, Sunday, I believe, with Cal and Stanford.
Right.
I believe that's a Sunday game.
Yeah, it is a Sunday game. And it's the Thursday game's at 6:30.
Right.
And then the Sunday game is not till 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because
sure,
it's on
TV reasons.
Yeah,
that's
national
always
TV.
why.
Yep.
Yeah, that's always why. All right. So we'll talk a lot more with Arizona basketball as we go forward. Thought we'd just touch on a couple of other things though here. Arizona football, Pat, schedule released today. This is a very different look, okay, than before. Obviously, the first year in the Big 12. This is the Brent Brennan era. It begins with home games against New Mexico and Northern Arizona. That at Kansas State game actually isn't a Big 12 game because that's who they were going to play way before they were going to the Big 12. That was that non-conference game. So they'll have in the Big 12. That's going to count not as a conference game.
Right.
When they go to
and I believe it's a home and home, right? So then next year, I think Kansas State comes here. It's the same thing. It won't count as a conference.
And nobody can see this coming. Those first 2 games there, that's
well, interestingly, you schedule that. It could have been a BYU or something like that. Now BYU's in your conference, and and now another like last year, this last fall,
Mississippi State. Yeah. Okay, so they got those 3 games, and they got a bye. And now we go officially into the Big 12 season, and we got Utah, coming over from the Pac-12, Texas Tech, BYU new to the Big 12 as well, right? Colorado, Coach Prime coming here October 19th, and then West Virginia. Your thoughts on the middle heart of the schedule there?
Well, interesting that you're playing those. They're the Rocky Mountain schools, right? Utah and Colorado. You get Utah there. That'll be difficult. Colorado here. We'll have to see how Coach Prime does, and then you get a West Virginia team coming in that probably isn't as good as West Virginia was, 20 years ago. But it'll be interesting to see them. That'll be a new opponent that we haven't seen up close here in Tucson.
Yeah, I can't recall. Definitely, they've never played West Virginia for sure.
No.
In my time here, BYU they played to open up the season. I think in Phoenix a few years back.
Yep.
I can't remember Texas Tech.
I don't know if
I know they played Houston, who we'll get to in a second. And also, I think there was a flex schedule in there. If we go back to the first slide, I don't know if we could, but I believe I forgot to mention that there was a either a Friday or a Saturday game in the first slide. And then I guess if we can go to the third one, that's fine too. There's another flex schedule game where the actual date hasn't been announced yet. So if we can move on to the next one and take a look at the rest of the schedule here.
There it is. Yep.
Yeah, at Central Florida, and then another bye, and then here's another one. They just had a home and home with Houston a few years back. That was when Houston had
They
one
were
of the
good.
top linemen in the
Houston was pretty
country.
good. Yeah.
I forget his name right now. He's the top defensive tackle in the country. So I believe flex schedule for TV, is that how you see it? There's no Big 12 network,
Yeah.
right? Fox and ESPN.
Right.
For the
It's
Big 12.
ESPN. And if you're not, and that's what we're gonna have to get used to, Jason. If you're not one of the big games on ESPN that week, you'll be one of the streaming games. It's gonna happen every once in a while. We'll see. It just depends on how well you're playing and your opponent's playing. At TCU will be interesting because they've been kind of a team that at least is always contending in the Big 12. And then I thought it was interesting, Jason, that the only rivalry game that's played on the final weekend in the entire conference will be the Territorial Cup game. The other one, the Sunflower rivalry, Kansas State game, that's going to be in October. A couple others are going to be renewed, like Houston and Houston and Texas Tech are playing again for the first time in a long time. That'll be in the middle of the season. It's not we're the only ones that get our big rivalry game, the last game of the year.
So really only one long plane flight, right? At Central Florida?
So in Central Florida. And that, by the way, is their space game. And apparently Central Florida, because of their proximity to the Kennedy Space Center and all that, and their ties with their university to the space program, they elect to have a space game every year where they wear alternate uniforms and they go all out. They've been doing it for almost 10 years. And it just so happens that the U of A is going to be playing the space game against Central Florida.
I didn't know that. All right. Very good.
Jason, I really think it's a favorable schedule. I think that you don't, let's talk about how you don't have to play. You don't have to play Oklahoma State. You don't have to play Iowa State. Those are, besides Oklahoma and Texas, those are the two best teams perennially for the last 7, 8, 10 years in the Big 12. You don't have to play them this year. And so,
as far as travel, you don't have to go to Washington State, which is not easy to get to.
Right. So you go to Central Florida, you have to play at Utah, which won't be easy. It never is. But I think the schedule is favorable. I think they will be, even with the coaching change and losing a few players. They kept so many of the great players. I think they'll be projected to be either first or second in the conference, and I think they'll contend in their first year in the Big 12.
Yeah, and then of course the bowl game situation will be different as well, and we'll be seeing new cities and things like that. Hopefully for the bowl game. Jason Barr, Pat Paris, here on the Huddle, KGA 9's weekly streaming sports talk show. Feel free to type in a comment. If it's clean, we'll read it. And we'll touch here a little bit on just put a little finishing touch. I know it's a couple days old now, but the championship games and championship weekend, so much fun as we talk NFL here. And I was saying it at the time. I know it's easy to second guess Pat, but my gosh, I know people have been piling on. But here's why Detroit needed to kick the field goal down 27-24 in San Francisco. The 49ers had scored 20 consecutive points and had so much momentum, you had to stabilize the game on the road. You kick a field goal and tie it at 27 and kick off, it's almost like a new game. You don't get that. And keep in mind, even if you get the first down, it's not get a touchdown. You're still in field goal range. It's not like they would have been going from not field goal range to field goal range. If they were on the 40-yard line, yeah, absolutely go for it. They were in field goal range. And then what you do is if San Francisco makes the stop, which they do, they have so much momentum. And then they went right back down the field and scored. That was the wrong play. And those Detroit receivers let down that team.
They did.
And I think that, you saw it.
They did.
And I think that Detroit lost the game as much as San Francisco won.
Yeah, and I think so. You have to go back to some of the games they lost during the year, the Lions, and especially that first round game that they played where they barely hung on just to get to the second round of the playoffs. I don't want to make excuses. I think the Lions looked at it like we've got to be that. We got to be that same team that we always say we're going to be, and that is go for it, go for it, go for it. And and that's, it can help you and it can hurt you, and it bit them this time and it didn't work out for them. And I agree with you. And we've got a commenter as well. Second half, the receivers just dropped.
There was a terrible drop on third down. Another time the ball's going through the hands. Yeah. I like, Greg Olson's fine as a commentator, but I miss Troy Aikman a little bit. Troy Aikman's a little bit more direct, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got to make that catch.
Yes,
You
you
know,
do.
all can't go through
And
your hands in an NFC Championship game.
I will say
Bateman's a little
this,
bit more direct. I missed that in the broadcast.
the tightness of the situation got to the Lions clearly, right? When
And
you've
maybe
got,
they're a year away. That's
yeah,
fine.
and that was my point all along, and that's why I said San Francisco would win that game because the Lions are a year too early, and unfortunately, there's no guarantees, that they're going to get back to that same spot. Lions were a great story this year, but they're a little bit early. Even, and you can say the receivers, drop balls, and you can say that maybe they should have kicked field goals when they went for it, and but they also, the defense disappeared at the most important time too, and that's a young defense when you got Aiden Hutchinson, who's supposed to be the superstar, and he probably will be, but they disappeared too in critical moments, and suddenly you've got Brock Purdy, running 20 yards, and Brock Purdy's never going to win a speed competition or anything like that, but he was able to get the job done, and the Lions weren't.
All right. So then you have here with the Chiefs, and you're going to hear why I'm leaning towards, Kansas City in this game. I mean, you have a couple of things. You have the best player in the game with Mahomes. You have a defense that just went into Baltimore and pretty much shut down the quarterback who's going to be the NFL MVP. Okay. And not only those two things, but if you take a look back at Super Bowl rematches, the team that's lost has never won the rematch, right? The Giants beat the Patriots twice. Was it Pittsburgh over Dallas twice way back in the day? Didn't Dallas beat the Bills twice?
Mm-hmm.
The 49ers beat the Bengals twice. The team that lost the first Super Bowl has never won the rematch. I haven't heard anybody bring that up all week or that stat. That's a historical analyst. I haven't heard. That's another reason why I'm leaning Kansas City.
I'm not saying you're wrong on some of those points, but I'll nitpick just a little bit. I thought the Ravens' game plan was atrocious, and I thought Lamar Jackson was terrible at throwing the football, and I think the Chiefs got the lead and then sat back, and some things went against the Ravens, like the fumble into the end zone and things like that, and the Chiefs held on. Was it the best Chiefs performance? Oh, it was maybe one of their better first halves of the year. Their second half, they didn't score a point. I think they kind of held on. I don't think that's a recipe for winning the Super Bowl for sure. But the 49ers, you can say conversely, the 49ers didn't show up in the first half, and then they just dominated the second half and won the game. So I think it's whichever team can put together an actual 60-minute game will win this. And I think it's more of a toss-up than anything. I don't think you're right. Historically, that rematch usually goes to the team that won the first time. But I don't, this isn't the same Chiefs as last year or a few years ago when they won, a couple of years ago when they won as well. I really think the 49ers, on
I
paper,
think it's the same Chiefs as last year. I just think they had a little bit more adversity during the season.
well, I don't think they're playing as well as they played last year. I really don't. I think that they had a great.
Going to
I
Buffalo
think
and
Steve
win, and then going
Spagnuolo,
to Baltimore and win.
the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, should get a lot of credit for that win because he was able to.
Good point, Michael J.
Well,
Yeah.
but that was a completely different era, though. Right?
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
a completely different era.
That was. But
Yeah,
I'm glad
and
you brought that up.
Michael James points out that
Yeah.
Dallas beat Pittsburgh the third time, but there was a generation between.
Yeah. The
Between
other
those
matchups were
games.
closer together.
Yes.
49ers Bengals was 7 years apart.
Right.
Bills losing to Dallas was back to back. Giants over the Patriots, I think, was 4 years apart.
Yep.
And the other one was a couple years apart too.
Yep.
But basically, when there's been a rematch,
Right.
the
Of the
losing
same
team
sort of era.
has never won.
Right.
I'm surprised so many people are all over San Francisco. It's making me do a double take here
Well,
because
I think
I'm looking at the Chiefs. I really only think, and this is a little bit of a sore subject, I really only think that part of the reason the Chiefs lost that Super Bowl to the Buccaneers, that was a tough deal that week with Andy Reid's son and everything that happened.
Yeah.
I do think that was a little bit of a distraction.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Brock Purdy's a nice story. He's not Tom Brady.
No,
so
but he doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be.
So I'm leaning here.
Tom
and
Brady
there's one other reason, Pat.
Okay.
There's one other big reason that the Chiefs have going for them this Sunday, and you know what it is. This is a big deal. Yup. Let's show it to everybody. They're not losing with Taylor Swift up in the luxury boxes.
All right. Everybody, make sure you record that. All right. We'll cue that up in 2 weeks and we'll play it. If he's right, he's
You
right.
think
If he's
Taylor
wrong,
Swift's
he's
going
wrong.
home unhappy? I'm sorry. Whatever she touches turns to gold, and Taylor Swift is going to be on that field celebrating a Super Bowl championship.
Did Travis Kelce win a Super Bowl before he was dating her?
Yeah, he's going to win one after he's
So what is she touching that's turning to gold? This team was already a Super Bowl champion.
Well, she's
anyway
helping to keep it together. I don't see her losing the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Taylor Swift has never won a Super Bowl.
You're on record. We still even have another week to talk about this because the game's not for 12 more days.
Now, you said something, Pat, interesting on the 6 o'clock news last night on K-Gun. You said people are rooting against the Chiefs.
Absolutely, they are.
Well,
and I think that's the exact point. Is this is about football, and there are a certain amount of us who are sports fans and love football who don't really care who Taylor Swift is dating right now and don't see that as part of the reason why we're even at this point. I don't believe that Taylor Swift has ever lined up for a snap for the Chiefs. And I think the Chiefs are there because they have Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. They have, Travis Kelce as their tight end. As I mentioned, Steve Spagnuolo is defensive coordinator. I think he's got their defense playing outstanding. But there's another team in this, and that's the 49ers. And yes, Brock Purdy is not Tom Brady. Brock Purdy is not even Patrick Mahomes, who many think now might be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
He is, Pat.
Period. And I think so too.
Pat's a warrior on the
field.
So too.
But you know what the Chiefs don't have that Brock Purdy does have? He's got Christian McCaffrey. He's got Ayuk. He's got, run down the list of this offense is pretty stacked. I think if Patrick Mahomes is a quarterback in that team, they'd never lose a game. But the bottom line is this could be a really good Super Bowl. We'll have to see. I don't think it's cut and dry that the Chiefs are going to win because Taylor Swift's going to be in a suite.
Yeah, Michael James, I don't think Brock Purdy's as good as Kurt Warner, but that's just me. I think people are just kind of,
well, their stories are very similar in a lot of ways in the sense that, as Michael says, Brock Purdy is Kurt Warner. I think he's definitely a modern day
Warner's a better player. He had the greatest show on turf, and Kurt Warner took 2 teams to the Super Bowl 3 times.
Yeah, there's no question. I'm not saying that Brock Purdy is as good as Kurt Warner, but there was talk a few weeks with a few weeks left in the season about Brock Purdy maybe winning the MVP, and for good reason. His stats are astronomical. They still are. You and I both know there's some decision making going on with Brock Purdy because he's only in his second year as a quarterback, and Kurt Warner's second year as a quarterback, he was playing in the Arena Football League at the Iowa Barnstormers. So, Kurt Warner still is a Hall of Famer and one of my favorites. And I have a long-standing relationship with Kurt Warner, and I love him to death. But Brock Purdy is kind of this era's version of Kurt Warner. It's a kid who didn't get a lot of talk out of the Phoenix area. In fact, did you see what Herman Edwards said today? Oh, we knew all about Brock Purdy. We went through the whole recruiting process. They didn't even offer Brock Purdy a scholarship until he'd already decided to go to Iowa State. ASU completely missed the boat on Brock Purdy. Anyway, he goes to Iowa State. He's Mr. Irrelevant, and he gets put on a team that has a great offense, and he's just a game manager. And there's not a knock on being a game manager.
I'll take the best player in the game over the nice story, and have my nice story or a nice story with Taylor Swift up there. I'm going with the Chiefs, and we'll finalize our picks next week.
As pointed out, they're in the NFC Championship game 2 years in a row. This time they actually made it to the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy, so not too shabby.
No.
Getting that done, and you could make a kind of a parallel comparison to the greatest show on turf, with Marshall Faulk and Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce, as to what the 49ers have right now to go around Kurt Warner. He had that
offense.
Brock Purdy had that.
That is a once in a generation offense.
No, I'm not. Actually, you can make a comparison. You can say that they're not as good, but there's certainly a couple of Hall of Famers on that 49ers team potentially. So, yeah, I mean, Christian McCaffrey is the greatest player in the game right now, period. But he's not going to win an MVP because he doesn't play quarterback.
Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the NFL.
No. Christian McCaffrey is the best player in the NFL right now. but
No.
he's not going to win an MVP because he's not a quarterback. You have to be a quarterback to win the MVP.
All right. Hey,
Because
listen,
yeah,
this is, you know,
yeah.
uh,
No,
I'm,
it's
I'm
it,
surprised so many people are thinking San Francisco. It makes me think maybe I'm missing something, but I'll reevaluate and look again. But I'm leaning
well,
hard.
I think most of us think that that Kansas City isn't as good as they were. They just haven't been all year, and they found a way in each one of these games to win. You can say that about San Francisco too. They found a way to win each one of these games, and that's what you have to do. But it's not like the Chiefs of a year ago or a few years ago, even as well, where it was just a given. They're going to put up 35 points every game, and you better be able to keep up. It's not that way right now with them. They're a little more methodical. They're not as explosive. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. All right. We'll have to leave it there. We'll touch on it more next week going into the Super Bowl. So anyway, this has been the Huddle, KGO9's weekly streaming sports talk show. For Pat Paris, I'm Jason Barr. Thanks everybody so much for watching live or I guess on delay on OTT. So we appreciate it, and we'll be back here next week, same time, and maybe finalize a prediction at that point. Until then, we'll see you. We'll see you next time.